Imagine being an expert bomb diffuser at 7 years old. Not with wires, not with timers, but with footsteps, with the sound of a garage door closing, with the way a key turns in the lock. While other kids were learning how to read books, you were learning how to read a room. You knew the difference between a tired sigh and a dangerous one, between a cabinet shutting and a cabinet slamming, between silence that meant peace and silence that meant something was about to explode. You could tell if your parent was drunk before they even spoke, sometimes just by how heavy their steps sounded down the hallway, sometimes by the way the fork hit the plate. Your body reacted before your mind could explain it. Shoulders tight, stomach clenched, breath shallow. You weren't dramatic. You weren't too sensitive. You were scanning for threats, because in a house ruled by addiction, the only predictable thing is unpredictability. And when chaos becomes normal, your nervous system adapts. It sharpens, it stays ready. Here's what most people don't understand. That wasn't your personality forming. That was survival wiring itself into your brain. And one of the roles you adopted back then, the one that looks the most impressive on the outside, might still be running your life today. So let's talk about what really happened to you. A healthy childhood is built on predictability. If I cry, someone comes. If I'm hungry, I'm fed. If I'm scared, I'm comforted. That rhythm of cause and response is what teaches a child's nervous system that the world is safe. But in a home shaped by addiction, that rhythm collapses. Some nights your parent is loving, other nights unreachable, sometimes affectionate, sometimes volatile. Your brain doesn't interpret that as they're struggling. It interprets it as danger. When stress becomes chronic, your brain's alarm system, the amygdala, stays switched on. It scans constantly. Tone shifts, facial micro-expressions, the speed of footsteps. You become hyper-vigilant, not because you're anxious by nature, but because your environment trained you to be. Over time, cortisol and adrenaline flood your system so frequently that your body forgets how to power down. Even the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for emotional regulation and rational thinking, can become less active under prolonged stress. Survival takes priority over reflection. Trauma researchers like Bessel van der Kolk have shown that chronic childhood stress doesn't just create painful memories, it shapes the nervous system itself. This isn't a single shocking event, it's developmental trauma, small moments of instability repeated thousands of times. Fast forward 20 years. You're an adult now. There's no slamming door, no intoxicated parent walking down the hallway. And yet, when things get quiet, you feel uneasy. When a partner doesn't text back, your chest tightens. When a workplace is calm, you feel restless. When life feels stable, part of you waits for impact. Because your body learned that calm was temporary. Chaos, strangely, feels familiar, even safe. Your brain didn't fail you. It adapted to a war zone. The problem is, you're still living as if the war hasn't ended. Here's something most people miss. Addiction doesn't just affect a person, it reorganizes an entire family. In dysfunctional homes, survival becomes a group project. And without anyone consciously deciding it, roles begin to form. Not because children are manipulative, not because they're dramatic, but because the system needs stability, even if that stability is unhealthy. Family systems theory, developed by psychiatrist Murray Bowen, suggests that when tension rises in one part of the family, the entire system shifts to compensate. In homes shaped by addiction, that tension is constant, so the children adapt, and they adapt fast. Unspoken rules take over. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. No one says them out loud, but everyone lives by them. If you talk about what's happening, you risk shame. If you trust what you see, you risk disappointment. If you feel too much, you risk making things worse. So the family unconsciously assigns emotional jobs. One child becomes the distraction, another becomes invisible, another becomes the achiever, another absorbs the anger. These roles aren't chosen, they're absorbed. And here's an important truth. You might recognize yourself in more than one. Roles can shift over time. A child might be the quiet observer at home, but the class clown at school. Adaptation is flexible, but over years these survival patterns harden into identity. You stop saying, "This is what I had to do," and start saying, "This is who I am." That's how dysfunction becomes personality. Every dysfunctional family needs a distraction, and often that distraction becomes a child. The scapegoat is the one who acts out. They get into fights, they talk back, they break rules. Maybe they experiment with substances early. Maybe they just refuse to pretend everything is fine. On the surface, they're labelled the problem. But psychologically, the scapegoat is performing a painful service. By drawing attention to themselves, they redirect focus away from the real instability, the addiction. The family's anxiety, anger, and shame get projected onto one child. If they are the issue, then the system doesn't have to confront the deeper wound. In many ways, the scapegoat is the truth teller. They are reacting to chaos in a way that makes the chaos visible. Their anger isn't random, it's protest, it's grief. It's a nervous system that refuses to normalize dysfunction. But carrying the role of the bad one leaves scars. When a child repeatedly hears, "What's wrong with you?" they begin to internalize it. Shame settles in. Identity fuses with rebellion. Some scapegoats repeat the addiction cycle, not because they're weak, but because chaos is the emotional language they were raised in. Here's the reframe most people never hear. The scapegoat wasn't the broken one. They were often the only one responding honestly to a broken environment. Not every child in a chaotic home fights back. Some learn to disappear, others learn to perform. The mascot is the emotional diffuser. When tension rises, they crack a joke. When voices get sharp, they get louder, but in a playful way. They become charming, animated, quick with humour. At school, they're the class clown. At family gatherings, they keep everyone entertained. But humour here isn't just personality, it's protection. If everyone is laughing, no one is yelling. If the mood lightens, maybe the explosion won't happen. Underneath that brightness is a child who is terrified of conflict. As adults, mascots often struggle with seriousness. They deflect vulnerability with sarcasm. They feel deeply, but rarely let anyone see it without a punchline attached. Then there's the lost child. While chaos unfolds, this child quietly exits. They retreat into books, video games, imagination. They don't ask for much, they don't complain. They learn that the safest way to survive is to take up as little space as possible. Invisibility becomes armour. As adults, lost children often describe themselves as independent. But beneath that independence is loneliness. They struggle to voice needs. They fear being a burden. Intimacy feels exposing, almost dangerous. Both roles share the same root, safety through self-erasure. One hides behind laughter, the other hides in silence. Neither were truly seen. And then there's the child everyone praises, the responsible one, the straight-A student, the mature for their age kid. The family hero doesn't collapse under chaos, they organise it. When a parent is incapacitated, the hero steps in. They cook dinner, help with homework, put younger siblings to bed. They become hyper-competent long before childhood is supposed to require competence. From the outside, they look resilient. But what's actually happening is something called parentification, the child becoming the emotional or practical parent to their own parent. Their nervous system learns that love equals responsibility, worth equals performance. If I achieve enough, if I behave perfectly enough, if I succeed loudly enough, maybe I can fix this. Here's the quiet tragedy. The hero often believes, subconsciously, that they could have saved the addicted parent. And because they couldn't, they carry a deep, unspoken guilt. That guilt turns into overachievement, into perfectionism, into people-pleasing so automatic it feels like personality. As adults, heroes are high performers. They excel in careers, they become the dependable friend, the crisis manager, the one everyone calls when life falls apart. But internally, they are bracing. Many family heroes hit a wall in their 30s or 40s. Burnout, functional depression, an identity crisis that sounds like, "I've done everything right. Why am I exhausted?" Because their success was built on hypervigilance, not joy. Anger is often suppressed. There was no room for it growing up. That anger turns inward, becoming shame. And over time, the body keeps score. Chronic migraines, autoimmune issues, gut problems, fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. In relationships, heroes often unconsciously choose partners who need saving. Addiction, emotional unavailability, dysfunction. Because crisis feels familiar. Being needed feels like love. But here's the truth. The hero wasn't thriving. They were surviving so well that no one noticed the cost. And when your entire identity is built on holding everything together, letting go can feel like falling apart. Here's the part that feels the most confusing. You tell yourself you want stability. You say you're tired of drama. You promise this time will be different. And then you feel intense chemistry with someone unpredictable. Why? Because your nervous system doesn't define love as calm. It defines love as activation. When you grow up in chaos, your body gets used to emotional highs and lows. Intermittent reinforcement, moments of affection followed by withdrawal, becomes familiar. And familiarity feels like safety, even when it hurts. This is how trauma bonds form. The push-pull dynamic, the hot and cold texting, the explosive fights followed by passionate reconciliation. Your brain confuses intensity with intimacy. On a deeper level, many adult children of addicts carry two opposing fears: the fear of abandonment and the fear of engulfment. You crave closeness, but when someone actually shows up consistently, it can feel foreign, suspicious, almost boring. So you might unconsciously sabotage it, finding tiny flaws, pulling away first, choosing partners who need fixing, because being needed feels secure. It's not that your heart is broken, it's patterned. Your body is trying to recreate what it knows how to survive. The unpredictability, the emotional chase, the relief after chaos. But survival chemistry isn't the same thing as secure attachment. And until you understand the pattern, you may keep mistaking adrenaline for love. No matter which role you played, growing up in an addicted home leaves behind two deep psychological fractures: trust and control. When the people who were supposed to protect you were also the source of fear, your nervous system learned a brutal lesson. Closeness is risky. As an adult, you might crave intimacy. You might long to be fully known. But the moment someone gets too close, something tightens inside you. You pull back. You analyze their tone. You prepare for disappointment before it happens. It's not cynicism, it's protection. Then there's control. As a child, you had almost none. You couldn't control the drinking, the mood swings, the financial instability, the unpredictability. So adult, you overcorrect. You overplan. You micromanage. You struggle to delegate. You feel anxious when things deviate from your mental script. Because if everything is controlled externally, maybe nothing will collapse internally. But underneath both trust issues and control patterns lies something even heavier: toxic shame. Not "I did something bad," but there is something bad about me. Children naturally assume they are the cause of what happens around them. If a parent chooses alcohol over connection, the child doesn't conclude, "They are sick." They conclude, "I am not enough." And there's grief here too. Grief for the childhood you didn't get. Grief for the parents you needed, but never truly had. Until that grief is acknowledged, control and mistrust will keep trying to fill the space where safety should have been. If this is where you see yourself, take a breath. Nothing you've heard so far means you're broken. It means you adapted brilliantly to an environment that required brilliance to survive. But survival wiring can be rewired. The first step is accepting a radical truth, often taught in recovery spaces like Al-Anon. You didn't cause it, you couldn't control it, and you couldn't cure it. Those 3 C's aren't just comforting phrases. They dismantle the guilt that has been quietly driving your nervous system for years. Then comes regulation. Before insight, before analysis, your body needs safety. Slow breathing, grounding exercises, movement, learning to notice when your shoulders tense or your jaw tightens. These small acts teach your nervous system that the present moment is not the past. Therapies like EMDR, somatic experiencing, and internal family systems can be powerful because they don't just talk about trauma, they work with how it lives in the body and in protective parts of you. The overachiever, the avoider, the fixer, they aren't enemies, they're protectors that formed when you were small. Reparenting is the deeper layer. It means noticing when you're spiraling because someone didn't text back, and gently reminding yourself, I am safe. I am not 7 anymore. It means allowing yourself to rest without earning it, setting boundaries without over-explaining, letting people be disappointed without collapsing into shame. Healing also means learning to tolerate peace. For someone wired for chaos, calm can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. But discomfort doesn't mean danger, it often means growth. You survived by scanning the room. Now you get to practice staying in it. And every time you choose awareness over autopilot, you interrupt a generational pattern that may have been running long before you were born. You became an expert at surviving before you ever had the chance to just be a child. You learned how to read tension in the air, how to shrink, perform, achieve, or rebel, whatever kept the explosion from happening. You built armor out of vigilance, responsibility, humor, silence, and that armor worked. It got you here. But here's the truth, your nervous system may still be catching up to. You are not in that house anymore. You don't have to scan every room. You don't have to anticipate every mood shift. You don't have to earn love by overfunctioning or disappearing. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to feel safe without waiting for something to go wrong. Putting the armor down doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means recognizing that you survived it. If this spoke to you, I'd really love to hear which role you resonated with most. The scapegoat, the mascot, the lost child, or the family hero. Share it in the comments. Your story might make someone else feel less alone. And if you want to keep exploring the psychology of healing and breaking generational cycles, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You survived the war, now you're allowed to live. Thank you for watching.